Okay, hello Greenwich High School and others in the Greenwich Public School community. I'm Frank Kovac, Program Associate for Social Studies. I'm excited to welcome you to our first ever virtual Veterans Day recognition. We are extremely lucky this year to have three incredible veterans who, in addition to their amazing service, also have some roots in the Greenwich community. It should be noted that this is an extremely brief introduction to the vast experience that all our veterans have, and I will certainly let them better explain during our dialogue. We also have three student leaders today, Fiona Bush, Wyatt Radson, and Hadley Rosenberg, who will be servicing as questions and kind of moderate the discussion. Today we have Lieutenant Commander James Waters, a Greenwich native who served in the Bush administration's White House Office of Management and Budget, and as a U.S. Navy SEAL officer. Captain Matthew Carstensen, Greenwich native who has extensive operational experience in high readiness parachute units, served in Afghanistan, and also worked with the tactical integration between U.S., NATO, and border European combat forces. And finally, Major Timothy Rose, who also served in Afghanistan, a Greenwich native who has experience in Special Operations Forces Liaison Element in Senegal, worked as a special agent in the FBI, and as a private investigator focused on rescuing human trafficking victims. Our student leaders will now facilitate some of this discussion. I will turn it over to them.
All right, hello everyone. We're excited to be here today, and we're excited to hear about all of your experiences. So the first question we have for each of you is, what interested you initially in service?
Hi, so Hadley, thanks for the question. So my name is Matt. Thanks to Mr. Kovac and to the whole Greenwich community for arranging this. So the three of us all grew up in a little bit of a different time where 9/11 was super prescient. Both Tim and I were seniors in high school during the event. But to be frank, finishing it when I was in GHS Stadium, rotating my tassel to say I graduated, the Army wasn't in my calculus. It wasn't a plan until I was at the University of Connecticut and decided I was wasting my time and money. I decided I wanted to give something back to the community. 9/11 was a big driver. So I thought I would do it for 5 years, and 17 years, I'm still here. I'll hand off to James.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I actually have a pretty similar story. Military service has been something that was pretty important to my family. You can kind of trace it back quite some generations. However, I think when I was in high school, I was a lot more focused on kind of school and athletics. And after 9/11, it became military service became something that I really decided to pursue. And I think one of the couple of things that in addition to sort of the war on terror that were important to me, is that I really felt it was important to serve something greater than myself. And I would imagine Matt and Tim have something similar to say for themselves as well. And then, I think also, coming from a community like Greenwich, I've always had this sense that, that old famous quote, for those to whom much is given, much is required. I felt like it was important for me to serve. We come from a town like Greenwich, and we're doing okay. It's important for us to raise our hand and serve as well.
Good afternoon. Yeah, similar to Matt, when I graduated June 2002, no plans to join the military. I was very much wanted to do baseball and go to Springfield College in Massachusetts, where I was going to be a coach and do all those things, maybe even return home to Greenwich and teach like my parents had for a long time there. And 9/11 happened. I was walking up from the theater department into the student center. I remember where I was, but it took me almost a year later when I was in college. And what happened was I hurt myself playing baseball, and somebody was going to ROTC, and I kind of tagged along, and I fell into the meritocracy of, as Matt and Jamie could attest, is you work hard, you generally get rewarded. And that kind of, as a former athlete, makes you kind of want to follow that pace as far as you could. And then certainly the zeitgeist of the time was to serve for a lot of people who wanted to, do more for their country than kind of sit around and wonder what to do.
So the next question we had was, what were some of the experiences, positive or negative, from your experience that helped shape your character?
Ooh, I really want to defer to James first on that one, but so unlike the other two gentlemen, I took an odd path where, although we're now all part of the same officer team, I started off in the Army as enlisted, which is very uncommon for the Greenwich area, but not unprecedented. Unlike the two of them, I wasn't much of an athlete in high school. I wasn't much of a student. I was just kind of a loser, and I had to use my time. I realized that as I was at University of Connecticut that I really didn't have a drive and I really wasn't doing much in my life. So to have even that introspection, I think was probably beneficial. But thankfully, the military in general, in my case, the Army, is set up in a way that it's going to find those things you're not good at. It's going to emphasize how you can be better, and it's going to help you progress to become better. So to that point, I've had plenty of instances throughout my career. Mr. Kovac mentioned Afghanistan. I've been there twice. I've been to Iraq once. I've done training exercises on 6 continents, all of which had their own challenges, all of which had their own hardships, but all of which show you that continuing to drive through to try to accomplish those goals you set for yourself, to know yourself and know where your weaknesses are, to know what your strengths are, and to use those to your benefit. It's kind of a general answer, but the military, the Army for me, will make those things clear for you and help you become a more well-rounded person.
Yeah, and I'm happy to keep letting Matt go first, I guess, as the active duty guy in the bunch. But no, look, gosh, I look back. I get asked this question a lot. If you had a choice to do your military service over again, would you do it again? Would you do it? And I took a weird path too. I graduated from college and worked for 4 years before deciding to go and serve. And my answer to that question always is absolutely. I would do it 100 times over, even knowing everything that I know now. I'd do it again. Some of I do feel like all of my experiences, both positive and negative, really helped shape a part of my character. So in terms of positive, gosh, I got a chance to be part of some really incredible teams and really learned the importance of humility and adaptability in a team environment. Just such an incredible and important life lesson that I still use today. Also, this sense of purpose on doing something that will help the country. I mean, I remember hopping off a helicopter at 5:30 in the morning, sun's cracking over the horizon, and we've been working all night, and I got off and walked back to my bed thinking, gosh, we just did something really good for the country. And so, those kind of things were great, but also, hey, the negative ones are good too. Everybody thinks the military is like it is in the movies. You got all the sexiest, latest gadgets, the best technology, the best equipment, and that ain't the case. Right? That is definitely not the case. And, I think what you learn from that, though, is, hey, you still have a job to do. You can't just sit back and expect, the best technology and mission job is done. You got to find a way. And so, I think there are, so many memories and experiences that really did shape my character and things I certainly use today.
Yeah, Matt and cleanup here. Thanks, Matt and Jamie. Listen, I think you kind of grow into your character. I think there's a certain type of character that goes there, but, if you don't feel like you are, at 16, 17, 18 years old, I wouldn't have told you I was going into the military either. And I think you grow into it and we've done some really, really cool stuff. But you see the good and the bad, and life is just filled with so many trials, both in and out of the military. I think you just learn about your character through the military. It's kind of it's a vehicle to find out who you are, and it kind of welcomes anybody who's willing to serve. But when you get done with it, you learn hard work. You learn sometimes there's no good place to stand in a massacre. I mean that figuratively, not that I've been a part of any massacres for the U.S. military or otherwise. But what I mean is we've all been in places where it's really choosing the best decision in a terrible situation. And you'll see that in your life. God forbid you ever get divorced. God forbid children or your family get sick. Sometimes life is having that. And that military kind of exposes young men and women to that much quicker than the kind of generic path of life. So I'm thankful for that. And I would do it again, even for all the bad.
If I can, I'm going to segue away. So continuing on after cleanup. I mean, what is education? What are you looking for in high school, and what are you looking for in college? You're looking at ways that you can personify and understand life. The military gives you a whole different perspective on that. Is it always good? No. Are you going to start becoming cynical? Yeah, you could do that, but you could do that outside of the military too. So understanding that life is full of problems, whether they're military in nature, whether they're personal in nature, social, whatever it might be. Understanding yourself and understanding that you're part of a team, just like James said, great point. Understanding that team, you're going to be a more effective element, creating a team, fostering a team, and then using that team to solve problems. I mean, that's what else are we trying to do here on this world? So the military just helps you understand better teamwork. Teamwork works. Being able to further your education, both academically and through experience. I mean, those are the things that are going to make you successful in life.
Thank you. We'd also like to ask, what advice would each of you give to someone who may be interested in serving in their country's military?
Tim, you're up first. Ha!
Sucker. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, now's the time, like Matt said, for education. Like, if you want to be in the military, there are so many resources that are available. I know Jamie knows Stu Smith as a Navy SEAL. There's tons of people out there that have free websites, and sometimes it's as simple as putting the right foot in front of the left foot for a couple miles and then doing it again tomorrow and the day after. There's guys like David Goggins in the SEAL teams. There's so many resources, both books, online videos, movies, and some of the movies are good and they are pretty real and they are pretty awesome. There's no excuse in your generation to be uninformed about what you're going to do. So if you're even remotely interested, now's the time to ask veterans like ourselves, anybody but a recruiter, I'd say. But there are plenty of resources online to learn even how to do the right things.
Yeah, I'm happy to go next since Matt, got the cleanup spot on this one. But look, just echoing what Tim said. First thing that pops in my mind, if you're interested in military service, is learn as much as you can about the field you're considering. Books, online, talking to people. I really find that type of information. It's helpful in understanding what you're walking into. If you're walking into something as crazy as what I did and serve in the SEAL teams, you better know. But talking to your friends and your family about it is really critical. Getting lots of perspectives, both those that support you and that don't support that decision, right? Because I think when you're presented with supportive and opposing points of view, it really makes you dig deep and understand, is this the right path for me? I had a lot of trouble convincing some members of my own family that this was a good thing for me to do. I don't know of any mother who is super supportive of her son or daughter going in the military. So it's important to have that kind of conversation and to use that input to make a decision as to what feels good for you. I think there's no better advice that I can give than that. I know I, for one, am certainly not the type to give a sell job on, everybody should go in the military, because you know what? It's not the right path for everybody. I do think I would love to see more people consider it, especially from a town like Greenwich, because I think, folks at your age could really benefit the country by stepping forward to serve, but it's a very personal choice, and you got to do what feels right for you.
Keep it on the same vein. You don't go to college because you threw an application at it and you don't know anything about that one you're trying to go to. You don't take a job without knowing what that job is, and it's the same thing. I think a common misconception about the military is that it's just this monolithic killing machine, which is not really fitting on what is the purpose of the military. I mean, the military is there. It's a government entity. It serves the Constitution. We don't, the three of us as officers have all given oaths. We don't give an oath to a president or Congress. It's to the Constitution, and the Constitution is development of the people. So you're volunteering. We haven't had a conscription army or conscription military since the 1970s. So it is a choice. It's a choice that you make of your own volition for a timeline that you can dictate within sort of. But once you're there, just like Tim said, once you're there, just keep putting one foot in front of the other if that's a choice you want to make. And you'll often find that this thing that seems insurmountable actually wasn't as bad as you thought, and you're better for it.
Okay, I have one follow-up question for our veterans. You spoke to your experiences and how you got to the military. Maybe you could give us a little preview of what you're doing currently and how your military experience, provided a nice segue. I know, Matt, obviously you're still active, but if you could speak to that, that would be great.
I'll go first, boys. So I'm down here in Miami, Florida. I'm actually over in Fort Myers, Florida. Currently, my day job is I do real estate right now during the day, but I work for a nonprofit organization for the majority of my time. We go after human trafficking victims, trying to build cases against human trafficking networks that are down here, whether it's at the street or gang level or at the institutional level. So I do that for the Anti-Predator Project. I'm still in the Individual Ready Reserve, which is for the best way. I'm kind of an independent contractor for the reserve or the guard, and I kind of take jobs as they come up or they fit my skill set. Towards the tail end of my career, I did a lot of human intelligence, and that's what I did for the FBI, where I recruited spies and sources. And so that's helped me tremendously in sales career, working with people, negotiating. And I still kind of either teach that to local departments or consult. So I'm kind of doing a hybrid of things outside of the military career, and it kind of fit my family life better. As Matt knows, he's probably on his 7th or 8th post or assignments in several years, and it gets wearing on the family, especially with the kids. So that's what my wife and I chose to do, and so I'm in Miami kind of doing a mixed bag of things.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us have a similar story on that piece. So I came off active duty. It's kind of crazy to think about 8 years ago now. And I stepped out of the reserves about 2 years ago. And I've been living in actually back in town in Greenwich. I live in Old Greenwich. Moved here about 6 years ago, and I work for I went and got my MBA on my way out of the military, which is a pretty standard thing. And then I worked for a small investment firm, actually based in Stanford, or more recently out of my dining room. The company I work for, we focus on investing in aerospace and defense companies, and particularly those that are aligned with national security strategy. So we're doing a lot of work in terms of understanding the defense budget, the various kind of political uncertainty that we're all tracking on today, and then trying to understand, where does the military need to spend money to basically meet the threats that are out there going forward, and then we buy companies. As an example, we own a platform which is comprised of two companies that build components for U.S. submarines. One of them is based here in Connecticut. One's based in Pennsylvania. These two companies make critical parts without which you cannot build a submarine. So it's been a lot of fun and a good way to translate some of my understanding from service in the government and the military and then trying to do something in the world of finance and running companies.
Man, thanks guys. Thanks for letting me go last and talk about how not awesome my life is. I'm really just kidding. So for 2 years, starting 2016, 2018, I was a company commander. I commanded 120 to 220, depending on what, 2 different companies, groups of paratroopers at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where we were on the global response force. If you recall, we sent a Army unit hastily on the 1st of January to Iraq. That was that unit. So I was leading that for 2 years. I then transferred to Europe, where I was a coach for U.S. and NATO forces, like Mr. Kovac offered in the beginning, to the point where I became a specialist specifically in tactical interoperability. Knowing Europe, we have to make sure that our fighting forces can kind of blend together. It's difficult to get somewhere geographically distant. So the way to overcome that obstacle is to make sure our forces can interact together early. Because of that, I ended up working a lot at the Pentagon and at NATO headquarters in Brussels. And I guess a consequence of my own actions, I got pulled up in the Army to lead war planning at the strategy level. So after my time here at the Fort Leavenworth Command and General Staff College, I'll head off to the Army War College in Pennsylvania, and then either to the Pentagon or some of the geographical combatant commands around the world.
All right, amazing answers. I'm sure there are many students and teachers who still have some questions. But with that in mind, if there are follow-up questions, I would ask you to ask your teachers to contact me, and I can certainly direct those to the appropriate contact. But with that in mind, thank you all, our student leaders, okay, our veterans. Thank you for participating. We hope this brings to light some of the amazing service our veterans do. And again, thank you. We all hope you have a great day.